speech is being attacked all over the place. And we're going to fight that. Now, with me is one of the co-founders of Speak Freely, David Reaboi, who you know from Security Studies Group, and I've been conspiring with for a long time.
Long time.
We also have Lee Smith, Real Clear Investigations, awesome, great thinker on the right. And we have Seb Gorka, Fox News, super counterterrorism, national security, and all-around political guru.
It's a lot for a business card, but I like it.
Hey, man, you know, it's Speak Freely, right? It doesn't cost anything. We can do that. All right, Twitter invented what they call the quality filter, which is something they're using right now that disadvantages conservatives as opposed to liberals. And that's, they can say. Now, they have a way to say they didn't do this. But what ended up happening is because liberals are prone to their mob mentality, their shunning, and their virtue signaling, they report conservative accounts and they mass block conservative accounts using a tool Twitter built. This makes conservative accounts considered low quality and hides our content from people who deserve to hear it. So I want to hear what everybody else thinks about right now the state of viewpoint discrimination on any of the social media.
Well, let me start with Jonathan Swan's tweet, which was very telling. What was it, maybe 2 weeks ago, where he, ironically said, "I didn't believe conservatives who've been telling me for years that they're being throttled and shadow banned, and now it's true."
Right.
So this is the crazy old definition of paranoia. You're not paranoid if they're out to get you.
Right.
And when they always say, "Oh, it's accidental and we didn't mean it," the funny thing is, it's never accidentally on the left. You never see leading Twitter individuals being throttled accidentally by these algorithms. So it's there. There's an issue there, and we can have arguments about being private sector platforms and what have you. But at the end of the day, if they're doing it, they have to say this is an editorial decision, and that will drive the market to say, well, maybe we want a platform where there is no editorial throttling. Because as far as I'm concerned, these First Amendment areas at colleges, and the First Amendment area is from the Canadian border to the Mexican border and the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic. That's the First Amendment zone of the United States.
Well, they have to watch too, because if they stop being a content neutral platform and become an editorial publisher, they're responsible
They open
for the
themselves
content. They can
too.
be
Right.
sued. So that's why they've been saying that. And when Ted Cruz asked Zuckerberg when he was up testifying, he's like, "Are you a content neutral platform?" Zuckerberg's like, his little data started skewing in his head, and his robot mind couldn't function. So I don't know. What do you think, Lee? You think we could let anybody say whatever they want, or where is the line?
I like the way that Seb put it. That's how I've seen it. It's an editorial decision, and I think it's very important to make them accountable. It is because places like Facebook have no editorial accountability. This is one of the reasons that the rest of the press is at an enormous disadvantage. Right. And I find it very peculiar the number of journalists who have come out to support this editorial decision, and they do not understand
like a cartel
how
mentality.
Facebook but they don't understand how Facebook has affected their own industry. I find it perverse. They don't understand the reason that all these places are suffering so much is the digital advertising space that was supposed to rescue them has all been swallowed by Facebook.
And Google.
bizarre.
I mean, that's 90% of the advertising online is controlled by Facebook and Google.
And let's be honest, we live in the bubble, right? I mean, we are wonks, we love national security, we're addicts to policy and politics. Most users of these platforms think they're neutral. They just think it's a platform, right? They have no idea. Most people don't follow the question of algorithms.
And especially if they're not following our tweets.
Our content.
If they have no idea it exists. I don't know. I think so. Last week there was a story that came out of Vice that said, Twitter is hiding search results for people in the search thing. So then they went and they fixed it. So I think Twitter put that story out themselves. They said, "Here, we've got this thing."
Conspiracy theory.
Right. No. I mean, it happens every day. But I think they put it out because they like, and if you follow what Twitter has been saying, they're trying to get you to think shadow banning is that, and that they solve the problem.
Got it.
And that's what happened, and you have to really explain to them, no, actually shadow banning is when they're not allowing people to see your tweets. It's not that you have to go and look up a user by their username.
Well, and that's what they got caught at. The reason they got caught was because Ronna McDaniel, the GOP chairwoman, right, Donald Trump Jr., a bunch of prominent conservatives found out when this European company they invented a program that lets you check to see whether your account is considered low quality. And they found out that, okay, the GOP chairwoman is, the DNC chair people are not, and they're reprehensible swine. I mean, compared to Ronna McDaniel, she's a decent person, and then you've got people like Keith Ellison and Tom Perez and others who are above the line. So they allowed what I call, and what is properly called, the Heckler's veto. Because the left will send a mob after you and report your account and mass block you, Twitter used those metrics to make up their quality filter. And in doing so, they knew the fact that the left does that more often. So you can't say they didn't know. What they had was plausible deniability. Oh, we're not discriminating based on viewpoint. We're discriminating based on behavior.
They just created another
Well,
metric.
it's the same example of if your metric is the Southern Poverty Law Center for hate speech, right, you're going to get a very editorially biased view of hate speech. So,
I was just going to ask, what happens, I mean, this is, just been thinking about this the last couple of weeks. What happens if there was a mass migration of conservatives and people on the right off of Twitter and say, okay, if you people want to shout at each other, because some of the times it seems to me like the purpose, conservatives almost legitimize the platform, like, oh yes, really, it's equal space, and it's not. What happens if people were to move off? Because one of the things that concerns me, I'm only partly kidding around about this, is one of the things that concerns me is that's the way the present, the historical record is being documented. There have to be other ways to document this record, and I'm not sure that Twitter is the best way to do it. So what are other platforms, or what are...
They kept saying, if you don't like the rules on Twitter, build your own platform. And then a company called Gab did that. Right. All right, and they said, if you're conservative, if you don't like the censorship on Twitter, come over here. Okay, now there's two problems with that. One is, I'm not on Twitter because I want to preach to the choir. All right, I don't want to talk to people who already agree with me. I want to convince people who might be listening to the conversation why the left is wrong and the right is right. You can't do that if you don't have the left there. So the left was on Twitter. We need to be there to counter their narrative. But here's what happened, and this just happened in the past day or so. Gab got a message from Microsoft, who hosts their platform, that said, pull some tweets or we're shutting you down. So here's the thing, they followed the rules that everyone was saying, well, if you don't like it, build your own. They built their own. All right, and the people who were banned from Twitter and didn't want to play there went there.
Yeah,
and some of them are nasty people, right? And
so what's the answer?
Right.
Well, what happened was the tweets they were talking about was this anti-Semitic loser who was tweeting about he wanted to breed Jews so you could ritually slaughter them. Literally. That was what he was talking about for their crimes against humanity over the days. He's a disgusting, foul, disgraceful, I don't have enough words for how heinous and egregious he is. However, the idea was he's not committing incitement to violence. All right, he's talking in very general terms. David and I talked about this with Speak Freely. The idea is you can say kill the Jews, you can't say kill that Jew. That's Brandenburg versus Ohio. That's the standard. Incitement to violence has to be specific and likely to happen. So Gab got a threat message from Microsoft, who was hosting, and they ended up talking this guy into pulling his tweets. So now they're just waiting, but now they're at their mercy.
Yeah, I mean, we used to understand that this kind of thing was a slippery slope. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was in 6th grade, I think it was 6th grade, we debated the whole Skokie Nazi thing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, I mean, I'm a 6th grader, so my first inclination was, okay, we got to ban it. And then the teacher said, you may want to look into that. And even as a 6th grader, I said, hey, yeah, I think there's something to that. Having people define the limits of acceptable discourse, like having the government define the limits of acceptable discourse is a bad thing. But it wasn't too much for a 6th grader to understand this concept. But it seems like it is now.
How can you understand? So, the protocols of the Elders of Zion. Propaganda invented by Russians to target Jews.
Wait, the Russians do propaganda?
Yeah.
Holy shit!
Did I say
When
Russia?
did they do that?
Oh my gosh.
When did they start this?
A long time. How would you even begin to understand anti-Semitism's evolution if we said, Let's ban it. Let's ban the protocols of the Elders of Zion. You'd never understand how you get to the pogroms, how you get to mass genocide if you say, well, I disagree with it, therefore I ban it. So I think it's not just Skokie, it's all of these examples. The impulse to censor is coming from where? It's coming from a totalitarian intent, whether it's targeting the right, whether it's targeting the left, whether it's targeting heinous anti-Semites or bigots. That's not what America was founded on.
It's airbrushing history.
But there's
Dave was saying, I mean, thinking of Skokies, I mean, especially last year with the events in Charlottesville, I thought exactly what Dave was talking about, thinking about Skokie, but then it occurred to me, well, you know, I said, well, we settled that a while ago, but as it turns out, that argument but you need to keep making that argument again and again because it's going to keep flaring up. So
well, since then the whole safe space ethos has popped up on the left, and you know Jonathan Haidt, I guess, writes really persuasively about how there's this desire to, you know, we need to say certain groups or certain individuals may need a safe space because you know, because they will suffer harm from, you know, thoughts or speech that will offend them. Well, it's actually the opposite of, you know, in clinical psychology, how you're taught to get over things.
And also, who gets to decide?
You know, and who gets to decide?
Who gets to decide?
Yeah, well, I mean, they get to decide. You know, which is and the most troubling thing, I think, for me is we know this about the left. We know a lot of. I mean, we've been watching this. We're not strangers to what these guys are thinking. But it's the people who are self-identified conservatives who have stood up over the last week very proudly, and I mean, some even wrote pieces saying that, hey, we need more banning, which to me is crazy.
But how are we back here? I mean, to Lee's point, it was George Carlin who said it, 10, 15, 20 years ago. He said political correctness is a form of fascism. So when are we going to get to the point where the First Amendment means the First Amendment, and we don't give a tiny group of people who are immensely powerful the right to decide what others can say?
How about now? And how about that's why we're here?
Right.
And literally, that's why we're here. Because the left believes in state control, and they want state control. I love quoting 2112 from Rush. You know, we've taken care of everything. The words you read, the songs you sing, the pictures that give pleasure to your eye. All right? They want that control because they want to be able to program people to come out properly. They're not willing to let the trolls and the proles come out their own way.
Can I get to the philosophical, you know, let's just jump up to 50,000 feet.
You can't get higher philosophically than Rush. I just want to make that point.
Than Geddy Lee.
No. Maybe.
But why is that? What's the intent? And the great irony of it is it's a positive one because they believe they can engineer perfection.
Right.
I mean, this is where it comes from. Whether you're Hitler in the Third Reich, whether you're Mao, whether you're Stalin, or whether you're the progressives in America today, they truly believe that man is perfectible and they're going to create Valhalla here. You don't have to die. We're going to create it. But if that's your goal, well, I can do whatever I want. I have to control human thought. I have to control human speech because otherwise I don't get my paradise. Only problem is, whose paradise?
Yeah, and I don't want to live there. No, it's 1984 is what they're building. And I mean, another one from the crooked timber of humanity, no straight thing was ever made. All right? So you can try to social engineer. That was Neil Peart.
I like it.
That's Ezra Pound or somebody, but not that I'm educated enough to know that. But the bottom line is you can't engineer humans. We are broken, and we should be, and that's the joy. That's why we made America. It's so broken people could do what they want as long as they're not hurting others.
Yeah.
Right.
The definition of hurt is not feelings. All right, I don't give a damn about your bad feels. All right, suck it up, Buttercup. And to the point of speech hurting people, like David and you said, it's that you gain immunity by doing it. In vivo, I think, is the term for in psychology where you deal with something that causes you trouble by dealing with
Special
it.
Forces guy. I'm sorry.
In
vivo? Ezra Pound.
What's
Sure, I'm wrong about Ezra Pound. All right, just so we're clear. But it's how it makes you tougher. You know, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. Let's go, bam! I know them all.
Yeah,
but
that's why the left is so furious. You know, especially since Trump won, because you know they thought that they didn't have to really do much.
Let's go here. Let's go here. 'Cause I want to hear from Lee. My issue, I hosted a national radio show today, and we got into this. We had Dinesh on. They're doubling down. In the last 2 years, there's never been a moment where you see the mainstream media, what the president calls fake news, look in the mirror and say, maybe we're just doing a little bit over the top. And we had that one moment after the election where, who was it, Jim Slushberger, whoever it is, the owner, the publisher of the New York Times, looked in the mirror and said, we may need to hire some conservatives. Okay, and then Brett Stevens becomes the biggest prog writer on the planet when he moves over to the Times, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's no self-awareness. How bad is this going to get, Lee?
Well, I mean, they made that very quick transition. You're right. A few days after the election, they wrote they wrote to their subscribers and they wrote readers saying, like, we missed it. We weren't looking at it. We didn't really know about Trump. We were just listening to ourselves too much. We promised we would do a better job. Boom. Right away, we fall into Russiagate.
Yeah.
24/7.
Right.
I mean, it's all Russiagate, wall to wall. I think part of it, maybe they figured, well, there is a Trump bubble for the media. They figured this was going to be good. We'll keep going after Trump again and again and again. I think that someday, in retrospect, people will look back and they will see Russiagate, and you and I, we've all talked about this, but people will see Russiagate as a disaster for the press. They'll take it as an example.
It's Rathergate. It's when Dan Rather invented the modern fake news by faking that memo or by pushing the fake memo about George Bush's National Guard service, that they decided that winning was more important. What was it? Fake but accurate?
Right, fake but accurate.
The
That's my
narrative is more
favorite.
important. The narrative is more important than facts. But here's the issue. So it can't be driven by ratings or by wanting more eyeballs because CNN is tanking.
Yeah.
And look at the fact. I mean, Chris Cuomo just did what 2 days ago? He actually went on live television to do. He should have had a tinfoil hat on to talk about how the president is signaling about QAnon with the number 17.
Because
and this isn't Alex Jones.
But because what happened is that everyone was going crazy about Alex Jones this week. What happened is the entire press, the prestige press, has become Alex Jones. They want to get rid of him to hide the example. That's where they come from. Exactly. They want to get rid of the origin point. That's what Russiagate is.
Yeah.
It's Alex Jones. It's full-time conspiracy theory pushed by the big brands in American publishing. I mean, it's insane.
It's just a question of tone.
If Q isn't real?
Don't go there.
Because I got a message
I got nothing to do with this.
Water
Getting into Q
buffalo,
territory.
agnostic Mustang, and I thought that
Mustang.
was. I know
That's
it triggered me, and I went all Manchurian Candidate, and I'm sure Q is real. No.